And in the cases of Syria and Egypt, why do these emergency laws go on for so long?
Well, in a sense, they've become just a regular part of the political system. Their origin actually dates back, even in some cases, to the pre-independence period. They were brought in by colonial powers who were interested in making sure that they didn't have to subject their own actions to local courts. And what has happened over the years is that, there is something called the emergency law, to be sure. But what the emergency law does is allow rulers to proclaim a state of emergency. And what has happened over the years is that those states of emergency have become nearly permanent. So actually what used to be called martial law, something that sounded like it was just an emergency measure, is now a permanent way of doing business.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about how, these emergency laws come into effect in the first place. Let's take the case of Egypt. That they have talked about lifting emergency law, but it hasn't. Why did it start in the first place in Egypt 30 years ago?
Well, emergency law itself actually started in 1914 when when Britain was occupying Egypt, but Egypt was literally legally part of the Ottoman Empire. The British detached it and declared a martial law in Egypt, which gave authority to the British commander there. When Egypt became independent after World War I, they took the emergency law, which the British had written, really martial law, and converted it into a regular part of their legal system. So they had a law to govern states of emergency or situations where you would have to call into being martial law. They actually activated it then in 1939, and it has been in nearly continuous effect since then. There have been some brief periods when they went outside of emergency rule, when they said the state of emergency is over. Very, very briefly in the 1940s, in the basically 1981. They were briefly out of it, but essentially it is something that has been nearly continuous effect. You could trace it back to World War I and certainly since World War II.